Welcome to SkillCast, the only podcast where you learn transferable skills through real conversations. I'm Nurbanu, your host, and for season 6, we're going deeper, getting more open, and taking conversations to another level. Because some of the most powerful lessons in life don't come from textbooks, they come from people, experiences, and honest discussions. So let's begin. Welcome to SkillCast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Oh, amazing. So how would you like to introduce yourself?
So I normally introduce myself as Dr. Emmanuel Dalavai, and I run a couple of businesses in the U.S. I have my umbrella company, which is EVD Enterprises, LLC, and then I have an executive coaching and leadership development company called Live Out Loud Coaching. So it's a play on words, but LOL, because your future and your career are not a joke.
Wow, you made something so serious into kind of a little bit of amusement, a bit of humor. I love that.
Yeah.
So is that what you like? Is that kind of like a motto? Like life is too short.
Yes.
Keep it simple.
Yes.
Keep it...
I think the older I get, I try not to take myself too seriously. My friends and family, my colleagues, they know that I like to kid around. I like to have fun. I like to laugh. And I think sometimes leadership development and even the art and science of executive coaching, people take it too seriously. And don't get me wrong, it's a very serious profession, and we're dealing with very serious and important topics, but it doesn't mean that you can't have fun and smile and laugh and enjoy, right? Because life is meant to be that way. It's too short, as we know. Just based on some recent experiences that we've had in Dubai and elsewhere. And so it's important to kind of appreciate, take time to pause and smell the roses.
Oh, so tell me a little bit about your time in Dubai. What was that all about?
Yeah, so, interestingly enough, when I worked with a very large aviation company, I'm sure you heard of Boeing, we had operation in the Middle East, in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. And I used to go there to do some training, and I was there a couple of times back in the mid 2010s. And so really enjoyed it. My wife and I had an opportunity to celebrate our anniversary somewhere fun and special. And we thought, well, hey, why not go to Dubai? She had not been there. And so we thought, let's plan a really fun time. And Dubai, if you've been there, you know, right? It's like New York City meets Hawaii meets Las Vegas. Okay, there's beach, there's skyscrapers, there's like these big, huge buildings, and there's lots of fun, right? Great restaurants, shows, and all these things. And so it was a blast. We had dinner at the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, or second tallest building now. And after that, 2 days into our trip, the war broke out, right, with Iran, and then everything changed. And we went from basically vacation mode to then pivoting to survival mode.
So how did it become so challenging? What was it? Because Dubai's so fun. Didn't you kind of look at it as like an extended holiday? Why did it need to be so?
Yeah, well, several things. So that first night, we were looking out over the balcony, and we could actually hear the missile interceptors and the drone missiles exploding over the bay where we were staying. And so that was very scary. And then one of the drone missiles that got intercepted, the debris from that missile came and hit a building that was only a couple of kilometers away, close to where we were staying. The Fairmont, yeah, the iconic Fairmont Hotel. And we were staying in that same Palm region. So then it started to really hit home, because as we turned on the news, we immediately saw that all of the airlines canceled their flights. The airspace all around us was closed off. And, you tend to think in your mind, man, we could be stuck here for a really long time. And so that kind of sends your mind spiraling a little bit in terms of like some dark places. And that's why I think things like what we talked about already, emotional resilience, emotional agility, emotional intelligence, just maintaining your composure, restraint, how you respond to stimuli in the environment is so critical to helping you get to the other side.
You've got this so much positive energy to yourself, and this really much, I want to say, someone that's really lived there, been there, and really keeps your composure. So how is your wife from a similar background?
She does a way better job than I do, okay? She does a way, way better job of maintaining her emotions and composure than I do. I tend to be, because I am so competitive and aggressive, like in sports and business and things, I tend to be a little bit more volatile from time to time. I've had to train myself to emit that positive energy, to emit positive emotions, because that tends to have a ripple effect on other people. There's this thing called, you may have heard of it, emotional contagion theory. It's the theoretical framework from which we get misery loves company, right? But the opposite is true too. The more positive people are, that rubs off on others as well. It's why you probably heard the expression, sometimes people say, smile and the world will smile back at you, right? I tell my clients sometimes if they have a hard time being positive, hey, all I want you to do for the next week is I want you to smile at as many people as possible that you meet. And they do it and they're amazed because so many people will smile back at them and say hello and they start a conversation, right? So it's a spark plug, if you will, of positive emotions.
I'm going to smile at you now.
Okay, yeah, see?
And see, look, you started smiling too. Like you gave me the advice, I smiled at you, and naturally you just lit up as well.
It's contagious. Yeah. I mean, you have a nice smile, so that also helps too. Yeah. So yeah, and I mean, I think the research bears out that principle too, is that I think when we are more positive, when we are optimistic, right? I like to tell some of my clients, again, ones who struggle sometimes with being positive and trying to maintain a positive mental attitude, that, your altitudinal position in life is really dependent on your attitudinal disposition. So dependent on what type of attitude you have, right, it can determine the extent to which you are succeeding in life or not succeeding. Because think about it, who wants to be around people who are always complaining, who are miserable, who are giving off negative energy, right? You don't want to be around those people. You don't invite them to go have a glass of wine or go to dinner or go hang out or go see a movie, right? Typically, they are the ones who are doing things on their own, or they're finding others that they can be miserable with, right? I'm at a place in my life, I want to surround myself with positive people and ones who emit positive energy. Now, that's not always possible because life can be difficult and tragic and sad, and you need to be able to emit those negative emotions, or even the empathize with people, right, in their sadness and grief and things. But there's a difference between being miserable and being grief-stricken, right? So,
I mean, it's okay to vent, and it's okay to have that time to say, actually, I'm not okay. But then also being able to pull yourself back up rather than pulling the other person down. So
that's right.
It's so important that we're doing
it is. And I think that's at the heart of emotional intelligence, right? Is that skill, it's the second quadrant of EQ, or emotional intelligence, which is called self-management, right? And it's our ability to pull ourselves back or to insert ourselves into a conversation. I'm sure you have friends or colleagues that you notice that just something is off with them, right? And rather than be silent, you use your emotional antennae to then insert yourself in the conversation and say, hey, you're not as talkative as you normally are, or you're not as peppy as you normally are. What's wrong? Is do you want to talk or something like that? That's the sign of a high EQ person, a high emotionally intelligent person, because rather than just ignore the situation, they have a very high situational self-awareness, and allows them to enter the conversation more intentionally and ask questions and probe a little bit, and better understand how they can be a positive source for that person.
Yeah, It's so important to kind of be self-aware and self-reflective at the same time as well. For someone that really struggles with knowing who they are and finding the true self, what would be the first step for them?
I think, I'm a big believer in that people can be trained and developed in some of the scientific principles, right? But they have to want to do it, right? They have to opt in, if you will. So, number one, giving themselves permission to learn more about emotional agility and emotional intelligence, because it's more than just being a nice person, right? You have to be, to your point, very self aware. In other words, what are my triggers? What sets me off? Or what causes me to emit positive emotions, right? And so in the field of neuroscience, we call that neuroplasticity. The brain can morph, and we can teach and train our brain to do more of the things that give us good feelings, positive feelings, and then maybe suppress a little bit of the negative experiences in life that we don't want to repeat, right? So there's a lot of good science behind the emotional part of the brain. It's called the limbic part of the brain. And you may have heard this expression, it's the lizard brain. It's where we get our fight or flight syndrome, right? And so people will tend to have a change in their physiological response mechanisms. Their heart rate goes up. They may start perspiring, for instance. Their rate of speech may increase too, because they get worked up, they get amped up, right? So all of these things, emotional intelligence, again, it goes back to self-management. We have to train our brain. We have to train our internal physiological response mechanisms to be able to deal with these situations in the moment before it causes us to spiral out of control.
Interesting. It's so important as well with this whole rewiring our minds using the concept of neuroplasticity. They say it's around 3 months for you to formulate new habits and new thinking patterns. Am I right in saying?
Yeah, I think the old wisdom, right, was 21 days, somewhere around there. Now it is closer to, now they say somewhere in 45 to 60 days in order to form a new habit. And I think it also depends on that person's resilience too, like their capacity to absorb new information, new habits, new practices, and the consistency level with which they do it, right? I mean, there are things that we do every day, or hopefully we do every day, like take a bath, brush our teeth, right? Blink, right? We do these things like just a matter of course, but new habits, we have to do them intentionally. Like we have to sometimes put reminders in the form of like little sticky notes or something that will jog our memory, that will train our brain to do these things over and over again. Because, especially as we get older in life too, we learn through repetition, right? Our brains naturally lose their ability to memorize things, acts, words, patterns. And as we get older, we have to be able to repeat information, repeat things over and over again. That consistency, that repetition helps us form these new habits.
Yeah. It's interesting. For someone that's trying to formulate a new habit, what will be the first step for them?
It's a good question. I think one is be able to call out that habit by name. Like what is the habit that I'm forming? Like give it a name, right? The naming convention. And then I think building some action steps around that habit, like how many times am I going to try to do this, right? Per day. Like for instance, just using that example earlier of smiling, right? I want to smile at least 10 times a day, right? That's probably going to be easier for a person who goes into the office. But if you're working from home and you have a job that does not require you to interact with people, you're basically smiling at maybe your spouse or partner and maybe your pet. Okay, that's not a lot of opportunities to smile, because sometimes they may not give you the same reaction that you're looking for that you're going to get from other people in your life. So, seeking out opportunities to do that is I think a good second step. And then the third step is repetition, right? It's like rinse, lather, repeat. It's doing it over and over again. They say some of the best athletes in the world, whether you're playing golf or tennis or whatever it is, they put in like 10,000 hours into their craft. And you think about like that, right? People who do leadership development for a living or public speaking, 10,000 hours is a lot of time. And so you have to put in the time to practice over and over again and deal with a little bit of setback, right? You're not going to get it all the time. You're not going to get it right all the time. And so I like to emphasize the expression progress over perfection.
Wow. So when people are trying to start something or perfect something, should they start something, have one small actionable thing, or should they have a full list of things that they have in mind? Should there be an action plan, or should it just be do one thing and then do the next thing without having a plan? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I people may disagree with me on this, but I like to look at it like small steps and then medium-sized steps and then big steps, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you can accomplish one thing, right? If you get up in the morning and you make your bed, the research has shown that that act alone gives you confidence to go and do bigger things in life, okay? And you might wonder, well, how does making your bed? Well, you've completed an act, okay? Because how many people walk out of their bedroom when they get up in the morning, take a shower, get ready, and they've got a messy bed. And every time they come back into the room to go brush their teeth or use the restroom or whatever it is, right? They see that messy bed. But flip the script. If you've made the bed, if you fluffed up the pillows, it takes like 2 extra minutes, right? Pull up the covers, throw the pillows on there. Every time you walk into that room, you see this made up bed, and it creates this positive energy, right? It creates this positive impression in your mind that says, hey, you know what? You have a bed. It looks really good. It gives you this confidence to go and try bigger, better things.
Yeah, I think that's so important as well. It's a bit like when you have a clean bed, a clean puffed up pillows, it's like you have a clean mind. You feel more fresh and refreshed. Whereas if you've got a mess everywhere, it kind of has that effect on you as well. Like, okay, everything's a mess right now. Your mind gets more confused. So I think cleaning the bed is like a metaphor for cleaning the mind and the soul and the body.
I would agree. That's a great point. And I think it can be a metaphor for a lot of other things in your life, relationships, right? Business, personal toils, and things like this. But it's also a reminder. Again, I go back to emotional intelligence. So much of this stuff, even like making your bed and doing things by repetition, is training your mind. It's the positive energy that you're devoting to a specific act, and then that allows you to create space in your world to do other things, right? Because everybody knows what it's like to fail, and hopefully everybody knows what it's like to succeed. And think about it, the best time to go and try something bold and new is when you had a really big win, right? You've nailed that presentation, or you've closed a business deal or something, right? Because you have this just loads of confidence, right? A mountain full of confidence. And because of that, it gives you more energy to go and try something new.
Interesting. So I know you touched about emotional intelligence, and you said that you can be trained into emotional intelligence. Do you believe some people are just naturally born with it? Or do you believe those naturally born with emotional intelligence also need the training?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily born with emotional intelligence. I think some people are born with just a natural compassion gene, right? And empathy, which are components of emotional intelligence, right? It means that you are dialed into others' emotions. But I think emotional intelligence itself, like the self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management, you have to work to be good at those things, right? We know people who are really smart, good business people, but they don't have good self-awareness, right? And then they may have good self-awareness, like people might tell you, hey, you know what? You're doing this thing that's really rubbing people wrong, right? And everybody's telling you the same thing, okay? And yet you choose not to do something about it. I had a client one time that they had shared with this individual that they had a natural body odor and they refused to wear deodorant. So again, they had 10 people tell them about this, so high self-awareness, but they chose not to do anything about it. So very low self-management skills, right? So the converse is true, right? So people can have high self-awareness and low self-management, and low self-awareness and high self-management as well, right? It's that composure, restraint.
It's like they have to go hand in hand. And you have to have the right balance for both.
Yeah. And that's the sign of a highly emotionally intelligent person, is one that has not only the self-awareness, but then they take those data points and then they do something with it. And that's the self-management piece.
And those are the people who are most self-aware to be able to realize that as well. So it's all very interesting. For someone that's kind of very new to this, what would be the first step in realizing what they need? Do they need more self-management or self-awareness? What would be the first step?
That's a really good question. I think it's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg type thing. I tend to believe that, just from years and years of experience of coaching leaders, working alongside them, being a leader myself, is that I think self-awareness is important, because that's the foundational cornerstone, right? If you are not aware of your own strengths, but then opportunities for improvement, it's going to be harder to lead others, okay? And if you don't have that natural self-awareness, it's also impossible to know, what do I do more of? And then what do I dial back on, right? What do I do less of that may be off-putting to some folks, right? Or maybe irritating to some folks. And so because of that, I think self-awareness is probably the more important in this case.
Nice. So just to kind of finish off now, what are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, a couple of things. So, we had talked about this a little bit earlier, is I'm working on a podcast. And originally it was called EVD on EQ, which is my initials on EQ.
I love the play on words.
I know. EVD on EQ. But then I realized, well, I want to talk about a lot of other stuff. Like, I have opinions. I love sports. I love writing. I love books. I love art, music, all these things, singing, So I thought, you know what? So I'm going to change the name. So we're scheduled to have our first session, right? Our first podcast released in June, right around the summer solstice. And now it's going to be called EVD on EQ and stuff.
I like that.
Right. Yeah. So
and more, basically.
Yeah. So basically, it's like, it gives me an out to let me talk about whatever I want to talk about. Right. So I'm working on that. I'm about a third or about a halfway done with my first book. It's called The 5 Emmanuels of Influence. Okay. And the reason why the name is kind of a play on words, all 5 of the words start with the letter L. And of course, my first name is Emmanuel. And so the 5 Emmanuels of an Influence, they all start with the letter L. So
I love that. I'd definitely love to catch up with you to see the progress in the future of the podcast and the book. And
I'll be happy to share some snippets with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.